Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 12 2019 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this week, it was a bounce-back week, definitely for sure, with everything that went on last week, going 4-9 and going 4-9 straight up and 3-10 against the spread last week. This week, was definitely an upgrade for both. I wish my against the spread record would have been a little bit better, but against the spread this week I am 6-7, and straight up I am 11-2. So definitely straight up wise, I definitely improved significantly, and against the spread I moved up a bit as well. But now for the year, so those percentages, that equals about 46.2% against the spread this week, and 11-2, that is 84.6%. So that's about 85%. Straight up. And now overall for the year, I am against the spread 83, 77, and 1, which equals about 52% against the spread. And straight up, I'm now 101, 59, and 1, which equals about 63% straight up. So definitely kind of going back to around my usual range against the spread. And hopefully this week with my picks, hopefully I can move that up a bit. And straight up, definitely, it's good to go up about 1.5% to 63%. And I have crossed the 100 game threshold for victories, so I will take that very happily. I am going to go through my picks now very quickly, just because of I am with time. But I do want to say for the buys real quick, the Arizona Cardinals, Kansas City Chiefs, Minnesota Vikings, and Los Angeles Chargers are all on buys this week. So if you have Kyler Murray, David Johnson, Kenyon Drake, Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, Zane Gonzalez, Harrison Butker, Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Mecole Hardman, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, the Vikings defense, Dalvin Cook, Stephon Diggs, Kyle Rudolph, Kirk Cousins, any of those players, bench them because they will not be playing. And also Phillip Rivers and all the Charger players. If you have any of those players on your fantasy teams, bench them because they will not be playing this week. And it is the end of the bye season. This is the last set of buys for the year, going into Thanksgiving week, where we're going to have finally the last 64 games, 4 16-game weeks, to determine who will make the playoffs and the end of the regular season. So for all fantasy owners, they are excited because they've had to go through this bye stretch from weeks 4 to 12, and now starting week 13, that is over. We're going to have 4 final weeks of 16 straight games where everybody will be playing. Alright, so time for my picks for this week. So this Thursday, when the 6-4 Indianapolis Colts go to NRG Stadium to take on the 6-4 Houston Texans, the Houston Texans are 4-point favorites in this game. I like Indianapolis here in an upset, +4. I'll take Indianapolis straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-7 Tampa Bay Buccaneers go to the 3-7 Atlanta Falcons, the Atlanta Falcons are 4-point favorites in this game. I like Atlanta here -4, and Atlanta is straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-7 Denver Broncos go to the 7-3 Buffalo Bills, the Buffalo Bills are 4.5-point favorites in this game. I like Buffalo here -4.5, and Buffalo straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-8 New York Giants go to the 4-6 Chicago Bears, the Chicago Bears are 6.5-point favorites in this game. I like the Chicago Bears here to win straight up, but I'll take the New York Giants +6.5. Then the next game, when the 5-5 Pittsburgh Steelers go to the 0-10 Cincinnati Bengals, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 7-point favorites in this game. I like the Pittsburgh Steelers here to win straight up, but I will take the Cincinnati Bengals +7. Then the next game, when the 2-8 Miami Dolphins go to the 4-6 Cleveland Browns, the Cleveland Browns are 11-point favorites in this game. I think that is a very high number for the Cleveland Browns to be favored, so I'm going to take the Miami Dolphins here +11, but I'll take the Cleveland Browns straight up. Then the next game, when the 5-5 Carolina Panthers go to the 8-2 New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Saints are 9.5-point favorites in this game. I like the New Orleans Saints here -9.5, and New Orleans Saints straight up. Then the next game, when the 6-4 Oakland Raiders go to the 3-7 New York Jets, the Oakland Raiders are 3-point favorites in this game. I like the Oakland Raiders here -3, and the Oakland Raiders straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-6-1 Detroit Lions go to the 1-9 Washington Redskins, the Detroit Lions are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I like Detroit here -3.5, and Detroit straight up. Then the next game, when the 8-2 Seattle Seahawks go to the 5-5 Philadelphia Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles surprisingly are 2-point favorites in this game. I like Seattle here on the road +2, and Seattle straight up. Then the next game, when the 4-6 Jacksonville Jaguars go to the 5-5 Tennessee Titans, the Tennessee Titans are 3-point favorites in this game. I like Tennessee here, -3, and Tennessee straight up. Then the next game, when the 6-4 Dallas Cowboys go to the 9-1 New England Patriots, the New England Patriots are 6-point favorites in this game. I like New England here, -6, in New England straight up. Then the next game, in one of the games of the year and the game of the week that got flexed from 4:25 to Sunday Night Football, when the 8-2 Green Bay Packers go to the 9-1 San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco 49ers are 3-point favorites in this game. I like Green Bay here in an upset, so I'll take Green Bay here, +3, and Green Bay straight up. And then finally, in the Monday night game, when the 8-2 Baltimore Ravens go to the 6-4 Los Angeles Rams in the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, the Baltimore Ravens are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I like Baltimore here, -3.5, and Baltimore straight up. So, all right, time for my thoughts on each game. The Indianapolis Colts over the Houston Texans. Man, the Houston Texans, boy, did they lay a massive egg this past Sunday against the Baltimore Ravens, losing 41-7. They are now 0, and they have still not beaten the Baltimore Ravens at home. They have now, in their 10 games, I believe they are now 0-5 or 6 at home against the Baltimore Ravens all-time in Baltimore. Deshaun Watson, for the first time in his career, lost by double digits. It is the largest loss the Texans quarterback has ever had. It is also the 6th time over the last 2 seasons where he's been sacked 6 or more times. The Ravens were able to get 7 sacks on him. DeAndre Hopkins ended up having an okay day. He had 80 yards. Carlos Hyde ran for about 69 yards. But the Texans offense really couldn't do anything. And it was just really amazing just seeing how limited the offense was. Deshaun had a big fumble. He also had a really bad interception to Josh Bynes. And I think for a lot of Texan fans, what they're going to point out to or bring up is the blown pass interference call, which I agree with, on Marlon Humphrey on the 4th down in the beginning of the game. That could have, if that was called correctly, that probably could have changed maybe the outcome of the game. But after that, with the Ravens offense moving the way it was, Lamar Jackson having over 300 total yards of offense, the Ravens defense just basically shutting down the Texans offense. Kenny Stills at about 27 yards. Kiki Kuti couldn't do anything. Their tight ends were basically non-existent. Fairbairn missed a 51-yard field goal. And I just looked at the Texans and said, they're 6-4, and, they've played pretty well, but to lose that badly, I know they've had a lot of injuries. Their secondary was banged up. They didn't have Roby out there. They didn't have Will Fuller out there. Tunsil was dealing with, he had a false start in the game. They lost Lonnie Johnson. They lost Justin Reed with a shoulder injury. It was just a overall bad game for the Texans. And, look, do I think that they'll be motivated? Yes, but at the same time, this is a very quick turnaround to have to go from playing the Ravens to playing the Colts, who just, back in week, have already beaten this Texans team, 30-23. It was definitely a weird game. And for the Colts, different perspective, the Colts overall played a pretty solid game. They got an interception on Nick Foles in his first start back. Marlon Mack, I think that's the biggest story of this game, fractured his hand, and I believe, and he's already been ruled out for this game. It was also, though, their first win without T.Y. Hilton in franchise history, so job well done for the Colts there. But Jonathan Williams had a tremendous stand-in return. He had over 130 yards rushing. Fournette ended up having about 70 to 80 yards from scrimmage, which is pretty impressive. DJ Chark was really the only big receiver they had moving the ball, and it was just by the end, Jacoby Brissett had a nice 5-yard rushing touchdown. He, I believe, threw for 183 yards, which, wasn't bad, but the Colts were able to just kind of fundamentally dominate. Vinatieri had a clean game, no missed kicks from field goals or extra points. But I just look at the Colts here that, it's something where I think with Jacoby Brissett being back, you saw the impact of what he can do with his legs, with his arm, with his decision-making. And I think, again, with the Texans, I don't think those guys will be maybe possibly active. Maybe definitely with Fuller and Roby. Just with the quick turnaround, I don't know if the other guys are going to be active. But if they aren't, I just think this Texans defense will be severely undermanned. And the Colts under the Frank Reich regime have not. They basically been able to play pretty well consistently through the last 4 games, winning 3 of the 4 games. And I just like what this Colts team doing. I think the offensive line's healthier. I think they have some confidence. I think through the middle of that secondary, with Ebron and Doyle, Jacoby Brissett should be able to make some plays. And with the lack of pass rush that the Texans have been able to really generate that much, I think that'll be kind of a detriment. And I just feel like, again, the Colts just looked more consistent. And just with Jacoby, you just see that team being able to fundamentally just play better football. And that's why I'm going to take them in a situation against a banged-up Houston team. Would I be surprised if Houston won this game? Not at all. I'm going to take the Colts here. A little bit healthier on the offensive line, a little bit healthier in the secondary. I think Jacoby's going to make some nice decisions, and I think the Colts just grind out another win. So that's why I get Indianapolis Colts here +4, and Indianapolis Colts straight up. The next game, the Atlanta Falcons over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This one, to me, is one of those games where the Atlanta Falcons, I feel bad for all their fans. Because through the first 8 weeks of the year, this was not the Atlanta Falcons team that anybody expected. The Atlanta Falcons definitely, sure, they were able to put up offensive points, but their defense was nowhere to be found. They gave up 30-plus to Arizona. They gave up they gave up over 50-plus to Houston. They gave up, they lost to Indy pretty convincingly. They had to come back for that. Minnesota, they only could put up a grand total of 9 points. So this Atlanta team has been pretty bad most of the year. But the last 2 weeks on the road in back-to-back divisional games, the Falcons have looked like the team that people thought they could be. Winning 26-9 against the Saints and 29-3. That's 55-12 over the last 2 weeks. The Falcons have outscored their opponents. Matt Ryan's playing an efficient game. The defense, which had 7 sacks entering the year just from 2 weeks ago, they've been able to have 4+ sacks in both the last 2 games. They've been playing really well. They've been able to... they got 4 turnovers on Kyle Allen, which the Falcons haven't been able to do in a while. This was about Devontae Freeman. This is about Austin Hooper. Kenyon Barner had the second longest punt return in Falcons franchise history, so job well done to him. And I just really like how this Atlanta team over the last 2 weeks has played football. Do I think it could save Dan Quinn's job? Maybe, if they can get to 8 wins. But I just look at this Atlanta team, and I'm just like, man, I feel bad for all their fans, because this is the kind of team that they kind of should have expected, or maybe thought they could have, with everybody there. And, they really didn't have that many defensive injuries, and Trufont's been back in the last few games, so it's definitely just kind of a nice surprise. And with Tampa, it's just the same old story, where, Tampa is showing you they can move the ball through the air. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were both top 5 leading wide receivers, and Michael Thomas just kind of destroyed both of them. But Jameis Winston with more turnovers, 3rd game with 3 or more interceptions this year, and I just look at Jameis, and it just, he's led the league in turnovers since 2015 by a significant margin. I think I said over the first 5 years, he's now in the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks to have the most turnovers in 5 or 6 years in that span. And I just feel like of Atlanta, with them getting 4 picks on Kyle Allen, Jameis can definitely provide that momentum still going. It's going to be their first home game in a couple weeks. They feel confident. I don't think they'll have an answer for Julio. That pass defense is awful. And I just look at Atlanta and go, I wouldn't be surprised if Tampa Bay could win this game. I remember last year, Atlanta won this game by the skin of their teeth. It wasn't for Deshaun Jackson not being able to dive out at the end. And I could see Tampa winning this game, or Tampa at least being competitive, because I know Atlanta's defense is not, has not been that great either. But if you look at the divisional history, they've played probably the best defense they've had all year against their division. And I think Tampa will put up more points than what Carolina and New Orleans did. But I think Atlanta, they could have probably just as wide a margin with Jameis Winston's consistent turnover margin. And I look at Tampa, and I just go, and 2 of those picks for Jameis, I will say, maybe shouldn't have been his fault. One was behind the back, and the other one was a hip ball, that ended up going against his way. But it just wasn't good. He also threw a pick 6 to Marcus Williams. But I'm going to take the Falcons here. I have more confidence in their team. I have more confidence against how they've been playing recently in division. And I just like what the Atlanta Falcons have been doing over the last couple of weeks. I think they continue it against Tampa, who has not been nearly as good as the Falcons have over the last 2 weeks. So that's why I like Atlanta here -4 and Atlanta straight up. The next game, the Buffalo Bills over the Denver Broncos. I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills here because when you look at the Bills, Josh Allen, 3 highest career passer rating games are against the Miami Dolphins. He's had no turnovers in 5 straight games. They've only had 1 turnover since October. Like, this Bills team is a pretty efficient team. I want to congratulate Steve Hauschka for finally making a 50-yard field goal, first field goal of the game in the first quarter. He was finally able to make a 50-plus yard field goal. He had 4 total touchdowns. I believe, has the second, he's the second fastest quarterback to have over 20 throwing touchdowns and over 10 rushing touchdowns. He's an incredibly athletic quarterback. John Brown had 140 yards and 2 TDs. And the Bills' defense did its job. Yeah, they gave a kick return touchdown to Jakeem Grant. Devontae Parker made some big runs. Balaj got a 3-yard touchdown run. But I just look at the Bills here, and it's one of those things where Denver and Brandon Allen, look, it was a pretty dominating performance by the Broncos in the first half. They were up 20-0. They held the Vikings to about 40 yards of offense throughout the first half, and then the second half happened, and for the 4th time this year, Denver blew a 4th quarter lead, and for the first time since they are the first team in 100 instances over the last 5 years to have a 20-point lead at halftime and blow it over the last 5 seasons. I thought the Phillip Lindsay played pretty well. They were able to run the ball pretty well. Shelby Harris had a career day, getting 3 sacks and a forced fumble on Kirk Cousins. But as the game went on, you just saw how the Broncos secondary was getting burned by Diggs. Kyle Rudolph got the big 36-yard touchdown to seal the victory. And, it's one of those things where this Denver team, like against Buffalo, it's kind of like a fitting matchup. The Battle of Allens. Brandon Allen threw about 240 yards, a TD, and a pick. Also, I do want to wish Andy Janovich well. He broke his arm, and he'll be out for the rest of the year. But they also had Fumagalli get his first touchdown. And I think, again, Denver, could they compete against Buffalo? Sure. Brandon Allen he showed to make some big plays. Phillip Lindsay's been running the ball a little bit better. And Josh Allen, the Bills' offense, it can be tough to watch. And I think the Broncos' defense, it's shown you at times against Minnesota. They shut out the Titans 16-0. They played Indy very well. They held them to 15 points. That the Broncos can play a very similar style of football to Buffalo. But with Buffalo being at home, they beat the Broncos the last time I remember in Buffalo back in 2011. If I'm correct, I think it was the last time they went to Buffalo. I could be wrong, but and also I know that Tyrod Taylor was able to get a win in 2017. Buffalo's been able to have Denver's number over the last couple years with quarterbacks not named Peyton Manning. And I just like the Bills here because I trust what this defense is doing. I want to congratulate Frank Gore for getting 4 full-time in carries, passing Curtis Martin at 3,115 carries. And I feel like, again, the Bills, this is kind of a Buffalo game. Over the year how Buffalo plays football. It's very Wisconsin, Iowa-based. It's hard defense, quarterback managing to the nth degree, solid running, precision, decent passing to John Brown and Cole Beasley, and maybe Robert Foster gets a play, and then you throw a touchdown or two, you make some plays to Dawson Knox and Tyler Kroft. It's consistent, it's ugly, but it's consistently ugly football, which I respect. And I think, again, Buffalo will beat their, 8th tomato can of the year to get to 8-3 and position themselves into one of the wild card spots. And also for the Bills, this is the best record they've had since 1992, and the best road record they had 4-1 since 92 as well. So that's like Buffalo minus 4.5 and Buffalo straight up. The next game, the Chicago Bears over the New York Giants. This is one where this is very Bears-Rams to me. I looked at the Bears' offense, and Pinheiro missed 2 under 50-yard field goals. That could have been it could have been possibly, the turning point in the game. 13-7, Trubisky threw for 190 yards, a TD, and a pick to Troy Hill. Montgomery really couldn't run the ball that well. The Bears' defense did its job. They got a fumble on Ty Gurley in the first play of the scrimmage for them, and then Eddie Jackson got a pick from Jared Goff in the Bears' red zone. And I thought the Bears' defense could do everything they could, but just when you looked at the Bears' offense, every time they needed to try to make a play, Jalen Ramsey would either tackle Robinson for a drop or he'd overthrow Gabriel, or he couldn't hit Ben Brackenhauer, their tight ends, and Trey Burton's on the IR. And I just really looked at this Bears team and just was like, oh, man, just painful offense. Really can't kick, and there's really no offensive weapons. And I know, look, the Giants are coming off a bye, and I remember last year they played this Bears team and were able to win, even with Tariq Cohen throwing a pass. I know Odell Beckham threw a pass as well, but they won it in overtime off the interception, I believe, from the fumble by the Bears. And it was 30-27. Akeem Hicks actually ran for a touchdown, I believe, in that game. But I'm taking the Bears here because I think the biggest stat that people need to realize is Daniel Jones fumbling. He leads the league in fumbling by a wide margin, and I think the Bears, they will be able to get some defense turned offense points, and that could be the difference in the game. I feel like Daniel Jones, for the most part, I think that, again, he's been able to show at times he's played better than Trubisky. He, threw 4 touchdowns against the Jets defense. He has the game against Tampa where he had the big run for the touchdown. He's thrown a couple touchdowns against, the Patriots. He beat the Redskins, in an okay way. And I think that, Daniel Jones can compete with Trubisky in the team. Because, again, the Giants defense, they don't really have to, I think Trubisky can make some more plays against the Giants defense, which is one of the worst in the league. But with how Trubisky's played, you don't know if he'll actually be able to show up and do that. That's why I like the Giants here plus 6.5. But I think Daniel Jones fumbles 1 or 2 times in this game. And the Giants and then the Bears are able to get either significant easier field advantage, and I think the Bears take that to advantage, and that's the reason why the Bears win this game. But I'd be surprised if the Giants won this game. No, because look, Chase Daniel came in within the last 5 minutes of the game, and I really just I think with the Giants, they've shown you some flashes to where they can compete, and I think against this Bears team with very limited offensively. That I just think it'll be close. But also, Daniel Jones going into Soldier Field. The Bears have routinely been able to show over the last, this year that they've been able to play, more effectively defensively at home. They gave up 10 to Green Bay. They gave up 17 to the Chargers at home. They gave up 6 to the Vikings at home. They do have the one outlier, I believe, against the Saints, 36-25. But I think with how limited the Giants' offense is, I feel like the Bears, they'll be able to get some turnovers and put the Bears on a short field, and those short fields will be the difference in the game for the Bears to win. And even if it comes down to a kicking game, I'll take the Giants kicker, but the Giants kicker has missed a few kicks this year as well, after Rosas last year being one of the most accurate kickers last year. So I think that'll be something to watch as well. So that's why I like the Chicago Bears here to win straight up, but I'll take the New York Giants plus 6.5. The next game, the Pittsburgh Steelers over the Cincinnati Bengals. This is one where, honestly, I think it's just because Pittsburgh, their defense will show up. Okay, like if you look, everybody has seen what happened on last Thursday night with Myles Garrett and Mason Rudolph. I think everybody can have their own thoughts. I will just say this: one positive for the Steelers and one positive for the Browns. I will defend the Steelers in this way. I think Myles Garrett was incredibly way over the line using his helmet, and I honestly don't think that Mason kicked him in the groin. I do not think Mason kicked Myles Garrett in the groin. He did initiate part of it. But I believe this whole thing started when Myles Garrett and the defense clearly, and the refs clearly missed a roughing the passer call that could have been called on Myles Garrett for the finishing of the sack takedown on Mason Rudolph. And then also, when you look at how Mason has, just kind of his reaction, I don't think he intentionally charged at I don't think he charged at Myles Garrett. I don't think he initiated anything. I think he was just yelling, "Take his helmet." But to the Browns' point, I do not think the indefinite part of suspension is fair. I think he should be suspended for the rest of this season. That is my own personal opinion for that. And Marquise Pouncey and Ogunjobi, you know what, Pouncey deserved to get suspended 3 games. That's fair because you can't punch and kick the guy, especially with the Castro hat holding him down. And also for Ogunjobi, that was just because it wasn't because of the push. It was just because it was the nature of it that the whole incident was over, and Ogunjobi just goes right after Mason Rudolph clearly when it was over, and he shoved him, onto his back afterward when it happened. But I think the problem with the Steelers is, look, also James Conner has a shoulder injury. Juju Smith-Schuster is already out for concussion protocol, and Deontay Johnson could be out because he got a rough helmet-to-helmet hit by the Cleveland Browns as well, and he was leaving the field doing his having a Vincent Van Gogh moment with blood coming out of his ear. I hope all of those players are okay. But I looked at the Bengals and said, I just don't think they'll be able to move the ball that well. They probably won't have AJ Green. Joe Mixon kind of had an up and down game. Ryan Finley keeps having turnovers. He had the game-losing turnover to Trayvon Mullen yesterday. He had a big fumble by Max Crosby, which I thought was significant. And I looked at the Bengals here and just said, again, also you're looking at Zach Taylor, who's 0-10. He is the 6th coach in the modern era. Started out 0-10 or worse. The most recent one that was the worst was Cam Cameron, who started out 0-13. He ended up going 1-15, and they ended up firing him. And I just know that because they beat us in the lone game in 2007. But I'm going to take the Steelers here because I feel like, again, they are playing a Bengal team, which is just, showing you right now they're on the verge of number 1 pick. And I just think, again, that defense, I think Rudolph will improve his play. I think that's one thing that people need to kind of put more criticism on, was how bad Mason Rudolph played, only throwing 1 TD and having 4 interceptions. And it was amazing that it was still a 7-point game, about 5.5 minutes to go, even with all the turnovers. But that just shows maybe how undisciplined the Cleveland Browns are. But I'm going to take the Steelers here. They've routinely swept the Bengals over the last several years. They have at least like a 6+ game winning streak going for them. And I just think, again, could the Steelers lose this game? Yes, because I feel like, again, the Bengals, they've shown you throughout the year, even through all the injuries, through Dalton, that, they were competitive against Seattle, 1-point loss. They were leading against Buffalo. They could have beat them. They came back against Arizona. Maybe had a chance to beat them. They were only lost by 7 to Oakland. So this Bengals team could definitely compete against Pittsburgh, and this may be one of their best opportunity to play to win a game, just of how depleted the Steelers are all around offensively. But I'm going to take the Steelers here because I trust that defense. I think Rudolph improves playing, and I just don't think Ryan Finley going up against that defense. This is not Baker, and Ryan's just, this is for third start. I think Keith Butler will provide a lot of package blitzing. Minkah Fitzpatrick, who has been one of the better defensive players, will have a big impact on this game, and I think the Steelers, with their defense and better managing play by Mason Rudolph, pull out this victory. But I'll take the Bengals here +7 because I believe the Steelers, this will be a low-scoring game by the end of it due to all the injuries on the Steelers' offense. Sounds like the Pittsburgh Steelers are to win straight up, but I'll take the Cincinnati Bengals +7. The next game, the Cleveland Browns over the Miami Dolphins. I want to congratulate the Cleveland Browns for the first time since 1999 that they have returned for beating both the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers in the same season. That has not happened since 1999 since they've come back, which shocked me, knowing this is going on 20 years and the first time they have done it. I look at, Cleveland. Look, Nick Chubb, he's got over 1,000 yards. He's one of the top 5 or 6 rusher in the league. He's probably been the most bright spot offensively. Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams play pretty consistent games. Joe Sherbert had a great game. Myles Garrett, up until the helmet part, was playing well. And Baker, third straight game about having a turnover. Ever since they had their bye after Seattle, ever since they had their bye, they've been able to play better and more. Baker's been able to play more turnover-free football. Austin Seibert, that is something that I would want to tell people about because everything that was going well, and he made some extra points, but he missed both his field goals. One was a 50-yarder, and the other one I believe was a 45-yarder. So those were the first 2 misses of Seibert's career with the Browns. I just feel like with the Browns again, Kareem Hunt's been playing pretty well in the limited amount of time he's been able to play. They have Demetrius Harris, there. I wish Njoku and Seals Jones could be more active, or maybe Seals Jones is back active and playing. I think they'll be able to run against the Dolphins pretty well, and I think Baker going up against the Dolphins secondary without Xavier Howard and without a couple of their other decent corners around them in their secondary, I think the Browns will be able to move the football on the Dolphins. But one of the key stories, though, for the Dolphins, though, I believe, is that over the last month, the Dolphins have been one of the least penalized teams in the league, while the Browns all year have been the most penalized team in the league in terms of how many accepted penalties they have. And I think that'll be why I think you should take the Dolphins here plus 11, because, again, I think the Dolphins, over the last 4 or 5 weeks, have shown you that they have put up respectable fights in every one of their games from their bye after losing to the Chargers by 20. They've been in basically every single game, and I feel like with the Browns, from what you've seen out of them, that they will keep this game close just by their own doing, by their undisciplined nature in general. Do I think the Dolphins have a chance to win? Maybe if they get a couple turnovers from Baker. He hasn't turned the ball over the last few weeks. But I just feel like, again, the Dolphins, it's way too many points. I feel like the Browns, they're going to give the Dolphins opportunities with pass interference calls, with helmet-to-helmet calls. They're going to have some flags in there to help the Dolphins move the chains. And I think that'll keep the Dolphins around in the game for a little while. I think Fitzpatrick, he threw for 325 yards. He didn't have a touchdown. Again, kudos to Jakeem Grant for making a big run at the end, around the end of the first half. That was probably one of the bigger plays the Dolphins had all day. But I'm going to take the Browns here. They're at home. They have routinely been able to play pretty well against the Dolphins. And I just feel like, again, Baker's been more effective. And I feel like with the Dolphins, they've made some progress and they can definitely compete. But just looking at what the Browns have done over the last, 2 weeks or last, 3 or 4 weeks has been, more consistently impressive compared to the Dolphins. So that's why I like Miami here plus 11, but I'll take the Cleveland Browns straight up. The next game, the New Orleans Saints over the Carolina Panthers. This is one, to me, fairly easily. I want to congratulate the Saints getting to 8-2. They looked like themselves. They held the ball for 37 minutes. Drew Brees had an efficient day, 300 yards, a few touchdowns, one to Jared Cook, one to Ted Ginn, and the other one to Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas also, by the way, has got 90 receptions through 10 games. He has broken Julio Jones' record for most receptions in a single season through 10 games, so job well done to him. I like what the Saints defense did. They caused 4 turnovers, even without Marshawn Lattimore, their number 1 corner in the game. Will Lutz had a couple field goals, to help out. And I just feel like the Saints, they just, were able to fundamentally, refocus themselves and play Saints football the way we've seen most of them this year. And they're coming home facing a Carolina team that, after starting out so well in his career through his first 4 games, Kyle Allen had not thrown an interception. Over the last 5 games, he has thrown 9 interceptions, including 4 against the Falcons. Christian McCaffrey, look, he's the second running back since Herschel Walker to have 2,500 rushing yards and 2,000 receiving yards in his first 3 years in the league, so job well done to him. But basically, besides that, nobody else on the Panthers' offense really has been able to do much of anything. DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, you have Greg Olson, really not making as much of an impact as he could receiving-wise. It's really been just McCaffrey or bust offensively for the Panthers at this point. And I think with the Saints, offense going into Carolina, the last time they went in there, they won 33-7, Week 17. That was against Bridgewater. Kyle Allen started that game as well. I think that they're going to be a little bit motivated to play him, but they also just know from just the end of the last year, they've seen some tape on Kyle Allen, and I don't think it'll be a good day for him, especially going against Drew Brees. This time around, he went against Bridgewater, and even I think now with Teddy Bridgewater, how he played in New Orleans in that 5-0 stretch, I think Teddy Bridgewater could beat Kyle Allen with the talent that he has around him right now. I feel like with the Panthers, Kyle Allen, was a nice story, and he seemed like maybe the nice gap between drafting somebody. But after you have 9 turnovers in your last 4 games, It's almost like one of those things where you're like, see, this is why Kyle Allen was your backup, and it's one of those things where I think Panther fans are now considering maybe we shouldn't be so eager to trade Cam Newton if we have to stick with Kyle Allen, or possibly Will Grier, who, if Kyle Allen, beats out Will Grier for your job, that shows maybe how little you have developed at this point, especially with the difference in college careers. Because, I know Kyle Allen was a decent quarterback at Houston. Will Grier went to a bigger school in the Big 12 in West Virginia and had some big moments. One of my favorites was, of course, the game-winning 2-point conversion against Texas a couple years ago for Will Grier. But I'm going to take the Saints here. Better running game, more consistent defense. They're at home. They have some of their confidence back. And I just feel like with the Panthers, as each game goes by with Kyle Allen, the confidence in him is going to decrease due to the level of competition increasing. And I just think that's going to be, it's going to be a rough day for the Carolina Panthers in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. So that's why I like the New Orleans Saints here, -9.5, and the New Orleans Saints straight up. The next game, the Oakland Raiders over the New York Jets. This is one where, look, I want to congratulate Sam Darnold. He is only the second quarterback since 1985. Ken O'Brien was the other one for a first or second year quarterback for the Jets to throw 4 TDs or more in their first or second year. And also for the Jets, for the first time since October of 2018, the Jets were able to win back-to-back games. If you were able to look at the Jets' record, they are 3-7 against. They are 3-1 against the NFC East this year, and that means they are 0-6 the rest of the way through against non-NFC East teams. They are playing the Oakland Raiders, who, for John Gruden, for the first time since 2015, they have won 3 straight games for the Raiders, which is very impressive. Derek, the Raiders defense, Max Crosby, one of the, a sneaky defensive player of the year, or defensive rookie of the year candidate, getting three and more, I believe getting 3 to 4 sacks on Ryan Finley and forcing a fumble. Josh Jacobs continuing to dominate on the ground with his running, another over 100-yard day. Derek Carr making big throws to Darren Waller. Tyrell Williams making some plays. Also, if you look at the Raiders, one thing that's been pretty impressive, a lot of their rookies are leading in terms of tackling. Jacobs is leading their team in rushing. Renfro, I believe, is leading in receiving. Hunter Renfro's been very good, a 5th-round pick out of Clemson. The guy who's been there for a while. I just feel like, again, with the Raiders, this is one of those games that, again, with the Jets, it was nice that you beat the Giants in a pretty back-and-forth game, and you beat up Dwayne Haskins, but now you're playing a team that, has routinely been a much more consistent and better team in all facets, and I think the Raiders' offensive line will push through what's remaining of the Jets' defensive line, and I think for Derek Carr, Darren Waller may have a tough day, especially with Jamal Adams covering him, but I feel confident with Tremaine Johnson going on the IR and how weak the rest of the Jets' secondary is. Tyrell Williams, Renfro, Tandon Doss, Trevor Davis, as a punt returner. But all those other assets for the Raiders should be able to run up and down the field and make some plays. And I guess at least there's one advantage for the Raiders is the last time the Jets hosted a home game, Saquon Barkley had one of the worst running games you could have, only running for a grand total of 1 yard on 12 or 13 carries. Do I think the Jets could put up a fight? Sure, the Raiders' defense at times has shown you they, can't really stop that much. But I feel like with how bad the Jets' offensive line is, Darnold's going to have consistent pressure in his face most of the game. And I think the Raiders pull out a tough, grind-nosed victory with effective manager-based passing and more Jets frustration, especially with sacks and turnovers. And Sam Darnold had a horrible pick, but he seems to be showing kind of like Josh Allen. He'll have one or two really bad throws a game, but good thing was he was able to overcome it. So that's all I like the Oakland Raiders here, -3, and the Oakland Raiders straight up. The next game, the Detroit Lions over the Washington Redskins. This is one where I'm going to take the Detroit Lions here because Jeff Driscoll showed me something. Jeff Driscoll had a 3-touchdown game. He had one of the nicest option runs you could have, especially when there was nobody on the field that was open for his scamper. I'm going to congratulate Bo Scarborough on getting his 5-yard rushing touchdown in the beginning of the game. But that Lions defense was really bad. But also when you just look at the Redskins, they were the first team, they said, since the 2000 Ravens to go 16 quarters without scoring a touchdown, which just seems like unbelievable to me. But it's true. If you look at the Washington games, they have been arguably the weakest offense in the entire league. They really haven't been able to move the ball that much. AP, they're not really giving them any opportunities to run. Darius Geis had about 50 to 60 yards from scrimmage, which really wasn't great. The Redskins have lost 5 straight games at home now. They probably maybe could be, for the first time in franchise history or in a very long time, go 0-8 at home, which I don't think anybody expected going into this year. I think Haskins, he's shown some flashes, but he's also, shown some mistakes. He's held onto the ball at times way too long and has been sacked consistently. But I'm going to take the Detroit Lions here because I saw enough out of Jeff Driscoll for the Lions to win this game. I saw enough out of Driscoll for the Lions to win. So that's why I like the Detroit Lions here, -3.5, and the Detroit Lions straight up. The next game, the Seattle Seahawks over the Philadelphia Eagles. I am taking the Seattle Seahawks here. That's why I like the Detroit Lions here, -3.5, and Detroit Lions straight up. The next game, the Seattle Seahawks over the Philadelphia Eagles. This is one where, look, the Philadelphia Eagles, they just haven't been playing well. Carson Wentz was 20 of 40 for 151 yards. He fumbled twice. He got sacked 5 or 6 times. They really couldn't run the ball that effectively. They really have no receivers besides Zach Ertz and Goddard that Carson really trusts or, really are effective. They've had a lot of drops. And I just look at Seattle and, I know, look, do I think Carson Wentz could make some plays against the Seattle secondary? Sure, they're 24th or they're 25th in terms of points allowed. Their pass defense has been pretty bad. Andy Dalton had a career day against the Seattle defense. Jameis Winston threw for a huge game on the Seattle defense. You look at what Teddy Bridgewater did in that Saints team. This Seattle, and you look at the Niners. Like, this Seattle defense is not great. But I just look at the Seattle Seahawks here. They are 5-0 at home, the best road record start they've had in franchise history. You look at Russell Wilson, who is in the MVP conversation, 23 TDs, 2 interceptions, 6 turnovers entirely for the year. And I just think, again, he's never lost to Philadelphia. He is 1-0 in Philadelphia. And I just think, again, it's one of those things where, look, could Philadelphia be competitive? Sure. But I think Seattle knows what the formula is. If you can shut down Howard and Sanders, and Howard was out, so maybe hopefully for the Eagles, Howard comes back. But if you shut down the Eagles' running game and you get them to, hold consistently, or if you get them to be a one-dimensional team, I think with Shaquille Griffin, with Trey Flowers, with Tedrick Thompson, with Quandre Diggs, I think they can stop the Philadelphia offensive receivers, because I don't know if Alshon's going to play. They have no deep threat. And if Nelson Aguilar and Arcega Whiteside and Mac Hollins are your best options, I think the Seahawks secondary can hold on to that. Also, I think, again, Tom Brady doesn't nearly have as many weapons. Russell Wilson has much better talent around him, receiver-wise, compared to Tom Brady. And I think also Russell's mobility and scrambling and playmaking is much more significantly impressive than Tom Brady's. And I think that will be one of the bigger differences in the game, where Russell Wilson will attempt to Russell Wilson will be able to execute playmaking better than Carson Wentz will. Even though I feel bad for Carson, because on that 4th and 10 throw, that was a drop by Aguilar. Let's just stop for being a hard throw. So that's why I like Seattle here +2 and Seattle straight up. The next game, the Tennessee Titans over the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is one where, you know what it is? It's Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill, over the last few weeks, ever since that Denver game, he has not lost a start. He's lost 1 start for the Titans in this run. He had the big throw to Humphries to win the game. He made some big plays to get him to beat the Chargers. And I just think what Tannehill's been able to do has been pretty impressive. And, pretty consistent. Derrick Henry's been able to run the ball more effectively. Losing Malcolm Butler to that wrist injury was pretty significant. And I think that'll be interesting to see moving forward. But I really like what this Titans defense is doing. I think that the Jacksonville team, they really kind of had a rough start about it. I think Tannehill, look, they got A.J. Brown, got Delaney Walker coming back healthy now, so hopefully he'll be able to play. But I just feel, again, the Titans at home, it's a tough pill, because I could definitely see Jacksonville winning this game. But I think, again, Tannehill's been playing a little more consistently. Nick Foles kind of looked shaky out there. The Jags, they had some moments. That the DJ Chark touchdown, that 36-yard touchdown was probably the highlight of their game. But then after that, the Colts were able to just move the ball pretty effectively through the ground. I think with Derrick Henry and or with Derrick Henry predominantly, I think they'll be able to do the same thing against the Jacksonville defensive line. And I think Tannehill will be able to make a few more throws intermediately and consistently that gets the Titans in position to win this game. So that's why the Titans here -3 and the Titans straight up. The next game, the New England Patriots over the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott's thrown the most yards in 3 games in Cowboys history. He has also thrown, I believe, for the most single season through 10 games in Cowboys history. He threw for 449 yards, 3 TDs, and no picks this past Sunday against the Detroit Lions. Ezekiel Elliott had about 60 yards in a scrimmage, but that big 20-plus yard touchdown screen pass from Dak was kind of the big turning point in the game for them there. But here's my problem. You allowed the Detroit Lions with Jeff Driscoll to put up 27 points. It didn't help with turnovers, Zeke fumbling the football right at the beginning, and it was just kind of just a bizarre game. And I know the Cowboys, they have an offensive line, even though Lyle Collins' injury will be significant to watch here to see if he can be healthy. But the Pats here, this is just one of those things again where they do not lose these games that often. I believe they have won the last four straight times in the Belichick era. They have played the Cowboys. I think Belichick has never lost to the Cowboys, nor I think Brady's lost to the Cowboys. I remember the Brandon Wheaton game where they won. 2011 they won. In 2007 when it was the undefeated game in the old Texas Stadium, the Patriots were able to win that one too. And I'm just going to go with the Pats defense here. I know the Cowboys, look, they've had much better offensive weapons. Dak is having his best year as a pro. He's actually second in the league in air yards per attempt at 8.8 yards an attempt, which is only behind Patrick Mahomes, which is pretty sensational to me. I don't think anybody expected that. But I just really like this Pats defense. They've only allowed 5 touchdowns in 9 games if you take out the Ravens game. Do I think the Cowboys have enough firepower, to make some plays? Sure. But I think with that offensive line, maybe not having Collins, with Tyron Smith been dealing with injuries the entire year, having Cooper with Gilmore, having Jones with Cobb and Gallup, I think the Pats can grind out another win. And I just think, again, if Jeff Driscoll could put up 27 points with the arsenal of talent that he has, maybe not so, the Patriots have better running backs. I think that, the Pats don't have nearly as great a receiving core as the Cowboys do. Because think about it, Tom Brady, this was the first game in his career where he started the game all the way through, and the one touchdown that was there was done by him. In that, when you look at it, it's one of those aspects where I see it as, for the Cowboys, that it will be a effective difference for them there. So that's why I like the New England Patriots are -6 and the New England Patriots straight up. The next game, the Green Bay Packers over the San Francisco 49ers. I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers here because I'm going to trust Aaron Rodgers over Garoppolo. Both teams can really run the ball effectively. The receiving cores, are kind of up and down. Kittle may not play for a 3rd straight game, which I think is significant. I think for the Packers, they're rested. I think that they can get pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo. And also, I've seen Garoppolo throw 2 really bad red zone interceptions, and I saw the Cardinals offense basically at times have their way with the Niners defense. Kyler made some sensational plays, and I think that will be a big point in this game. Could it be interesting to see what happens? Sure. I think with the Green Bay Packers, their offensive line can get worked by the Niners defensive line, and I feel like, again, the Packers secondary at times has shown to you, look, with the games against Matt Moore, with the game against the Chargers, they can get bullied from, physical teams, and the Niners have definitely one of the more physical offensive and defensive lines in the league. But I'm going to take the Packers here because I'll trust the better quarterback, and it's always fun to see Rodgers go up against the Niners because that was always a team that he wanted to play against or play with. So that's why I like the Green Bay Packers here, +3, and the Green Bay Packers straight up. And finally, the Ravens over the Rams. I'm going to take the Ravens here because I just think we have been the most dominant, the hottest team in football. 6 straight wins, longest streak in the league. Lamar Jackson is the first Ravens quarterback to have 4 touchdown passes in multiple games. He's had 4 130-plus quarterback ratings. The first quarterback since Bart Starr, and I believe his first or second year to have that feat. He's now had the most consecutive games with at least 60 yards rushing. And I just look at this Ravens team, and I look at this Rams team, and I think, again, if we can shut down Todd Gurley, which, look, the Rams, they played a different style of football. They played power-based football, which I thought was significant. But I look at what's going on with the Los Angeles Rams, and I think with how they've been able to run the ball, with how they've been able to not really have that much offense. Jared Goff had 181 yards, an interception. He only threw it about a little over 20 times. I think the Ravens defense, they've been able to improve over the last month. They've held Seattle to 16 points. They held New England to 20. They held Cincinnati to 13, and they held Houston to 7. So their defense has been much more consistent. And I feel like with Brandon Cooks being in concussion protocol, I don't know if Robert Woods is going to play, but I trust our corners against him. Their tight ends really are not that really effective. And the Rams' offensive line, as great as it was this past week, they do have Rob Havenstein dealing with a knee injury. Their center is out for the year, or their second center is out for the year. That's why I had to get Austin Corbett from the Browns to come in, but they had to move him at guard. And I just think, again, this Ravens defense will be able to overwhelm the Rams' offensive line and cause Jared Goff to have another rough game. And also, I just look at what Lamar can do. He can move around the Rams' pass rush. I also think with the Rams' secondary, look, he's not going to try Jalen Ramsey that often, but going up against Troy Hill and the other Rams corners, Coleman, I think we have enough talent, especially with our tight ends. We have the best tight ends in the league in terms of production. That's not even close. And I think that the Ravens will be able to kind of use that as motivation to win this game. And I think, again, it's one of those things where, Eric Weddle has some insight on Lamar since he played with him last year. But also we have Marcus Peters, who's played with the Rams this year, and he knows what the Rams, what they like to do, and their tendencies and most of the talent there. Fowler left with an injury, so that'll be something interesting to see what's going to happen with him. And I just think the Ravens, they've just been far better and more consistent. And I think, again, with Jared Goff playing as bad as he has, I think that will kind of play into the Ravens' hand. We lead the league in terms of defensive touchdowns, and I think Marcus Peters could get one against Jared Goff, and that'd be such, a great moment for him in this situation. So that's the Ravens minus 3.5 and the Ravens straight up. So those are my thoughts and picks for this week. Like, comment, rate, subscribe. And please check out the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page. Check out other great prognosticators such as TheBlindCanadianCat, Andrew Warren, Halfmoon's Picks, Bridgewater's Finest, The Electric Football Show, Redzone Rosano, Gioknows, Leighton Harmon, Edward Lerner, all those guys and gals that do picks. Please check out the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page on Facebook. Type in those 3 words, NFL YouTube Prognosticators, to check out other great progs in this situation. That do picks just like I do every week. So until next week for my Week 13 Thanksgiving week predictions, this is Matthew Fanatic signing off. Until next time, so long.